Some storms don't destroy your life in a single moment. They wait until the person you trust most opens the door and leaves you inside them. The rain slammed against the windshield of Damian Sterling's black Range Rover, so hard it sounded like gravel hitting steel. Thunder rolled across the empty highway outside Boston, while Olivia Bennett pressed one trembling hand beneath her swollen belly, trying to calm the sharp pressure tightening through her body. 7 months pregnant, exhausted, and still wearing the cream cashmere dress from Damian's charity dinner, she stared at her husband through the dim blue glow of the dashboard. He didn't look at her. His jaw stayed tight. One hand rested coldly on the steering wheel, while city lights disappeared behind sheets of rain. "Damian," Olivia whispered carefully, "please just take me home." The windshield wipers dragged back and forth in violent rhythm. Damian laughed once under his breath. Not amused. "Empty. Home," he muttered. "You still think that place is your home?" Olivia felt her throat tighten. 30 minutes earlier, she had stood inside the ballroom of the Sterling Foundation Gala while New England's wealthiest investors applauded her husband beneath crystal chandeliers worth more than most American homes. 30 minutes earlier, Vanessa Hale had walked into the ballroom wearing diamonds Damian once promised Olivia belonged only to his wife. And now Olivia sat trapped inside a storm beside a man she barely recognized anymore. Another flash of lightning lit up the SUV. Damian suddenly jerked the wheel toward the shoulder of the highway. Tires sprayed water across the pavement as the vehicle stopped beside a stretch of dark trees bending violently in the wind. Olivia blinked in confusion. "Why are we stopping?" Damian shifted the car into park. Then finally he looked at her. His gray eyes held no warmth at all. "Because I'm done pretending." The words landed harder than the thunder outside. Olivia instinctively wrapped both arms around her stomach as the baby kicked sharply beneath her ribs. Damian reached into the back seat, grabbed her overnight bag, and shoved it toward her lap. "You'll stay somewhere else. Tonight." Olivia stared at him, unable to process what she was hearing. "In this weather?" she asked quietly. "Damian, I'm pregnant. And I'm tired," he snapped. "Tired of the crying. Tired of the pressure. Tired of walking into every room, feeling trapped by a life I never wanted this early." Olivia felt the air leave her lungs. Rain hammered the roof like gunfire. Somewhere far away, headlights moved through the storm and disappeared again. "You don't mean that," she whispered. Damian opened his door. Cold wind exploded into the SUV immediately, carrying rain across the leather seats. Olivia flinched from the freezing air. Damian stepped out, walked around the vehicle, and yanked open her side door. "Get out, Olivia." She stared at him in disbelief. Water soaked his suit within seconds, but he didn't care. "Please," she whispered, tears mixing with rain on her cheeks. "Not tonight." Damian tossed her suitcase onto the flooded roadside. The bag splashed into muddy water beside the guardrail. "If you want to keep that baby," he said coldly, "learn how to survive without me." Then he climbed back into the SUV. Olivia stumbled forward through the rain as contractions twisted suddenly through her abdomen. "Damian," she cried. But the headlights were already turning away from her. Red taillights vanished into the storm. And Olivia Bennett stood alone on the side of Interstate 90, 7 months pregnant, soaked to the bone, while blood and rainwater mixed silently beneath her shaking feet. The storm swallowed Olivia's scream almost instantly. Rain drenched her hair, her dress, her skin, until she could barely tell where the cold ended and the fear began. She wrapped both arms around her stomach and forced herself to breathe through another painful contraction while the empty highway stretched endlessly in both directions. Her suitcase lay overturned near the guardrail, expensive maternity clothes spilling into muddy water beside the road like pieces of a life someone had violently erased. Olivia bent slowly, trying to grab the handle, but the sharp tightening in her abdomen nearly dropped her to her knees. "Not now," she whispered desperately. "Please, not now." The baby shifted hard beneath her ribs as thunder cracked overhead. Somewhere deep inside her chest, panic finally began replacing shock. Damian had not just abandoned her for the night. He had abandoned her completely. The realization hid in fragments. Vanessa's hand resting possessively on Damian's arm during the gala. The way investors avoided Olivia's eyes. The cold silence inside the SUV before he finally stopped the car. Suddenly, the past 2 years rearranged themselves into something uglier than she wanted to admit. The canceled vacations. The late-night meetings. The separate bedrooms disguised as work stress. Olivia started walking along the shoulder of the interstate because standing still felt more dangerous. Water soaked through her heels immediately. Every few seconds headlights appeared in the distance only to disappear again through sheets of rain. Nobody stopped. Nobody even slowed down. Her breathing became uneven as another contraction rolled through her body, stronger this time. She pressed one hand against the guardrail and closed her eyes. "You are okay?" she whispered to the baby. "Mom is here. Mom is still here." But even she no longer believed the words completely. 3 years earlier, Olivia Bennett had stood beside Damian Sterling on the rooftop terrace of their Manhattan penthouse, while reporters called them America's perfect power couple. Damian had been handsome, ambitious, magnetic. A self-made billionaire with magazine covers, television interviews, and billion-dollar real estate projects rising across the East Coast. Olivia had been the quiet architect who redesigned his first luxury hotel for almost no money because she believed in him before anyone else did. She remembered surviving on takeout coffee and 4 hours of sleep while Damian built Sterling Development from a tiny office in Brooklyn. She remembered selling jewelry inherited from her grandmother so payroll checks would clear during the company's first financial crisis. Back then, Damian used to kiss her forehead and say, "None of this exists without you." But success changed him slowly. Then all at once. Once the private jets arrived, so did the distance. Once the cameras started following him, so did women like Vanessa Hale. Younger, louder, perfect for photographs and red carpet events. Olivia ignored the rumors because she loved him, because she believed marriages survived hard seasons, because she thought the baby would bring him back. Lightning flashed across the sky as Olivia nearly slipped on the flooded pavement. She caught herself against a highway sign and cried out softly as pain twisted through her lower back again. Her phone battery had died almost an hour earlier. Her fingers were numb from cold, and for the first time since Damian drove away, a terrifying thought entered her mind. What if nobody came? A pair of headlights suddenly appeared behind her, brighter than the others. Larger, slower. Olivia turned weakly as a black SUV reduced speed beside the shoulder. For one impossible second, she thought Damian had returned. But when the driver's door opened, the man stepping into the rain was someone she had never seen before. The man moved through the rain with the calm precision of someone completely unafraid of storms. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark wool coat already soaked from the weather. Olivia could not see his face clearly at first because the headlights behind him turned the falling rain into silver streaks across the highway. "Ma'am," he called over the wind. "Are you hurt?" Olivia tried to answer, but another contraction stole the breath from her lungs before words could form. She doubled over slightly, gripping the cold metal guardrail as pain tightened across her abdomen. The stranger reached her within seconds. "Easy," he said quietly. His voice was low and controlled, the kind that made people listen during emergencies. "You should not be standing out here." Olivia looked up finally. Gray eyes. Early 40s maybe. Expensive watch partially hidden beneath his sleeve. Not flashy rich. Quiet rich. The dangerous kind. "I am fine," she lied automatically. The stranger glanced down at the blood diluted by rainwater near her shoes and raised one eyebrow. "No," he said calmly. "You are not." Thunder shook the highway again. He removed his coat immediately and wrapped it around her shoulders before she could protest. The warmth nearly broke something inside her. Olivia had spent so long pretending she did not need help that simple kindness suddenly felt unbearable. "My name is Ethan," he said. "Can you tell me yours?" "Olivia." Her teeth chattered from cold. "Olivia Bennett." Ethan's expression shifted almost invisibly as another gust of wind whipped rain across the road. "You are pregnant," he observed carefully. Olivia nodded once. 7 months. Ethan looked past her toward the empty interstate, then back toward the muddy suitcase near the guardrail. His eyes missed nothing. "Where is the father?" Olivia stared toward the darkness where Damian's SUV had disappeared almost 20 minutes earlier. For a moment she considered lying again, pretending there had been an accident, pretending she had not been abandoned like unwanted luggage in the middle of a storm. But exhaustion stripped away pride. "He left," she whispered. Ethan became very still, not shocked, not emotional, just silent in a way that suddenly made the storm itself feel quieter. Another contraction hit harder than the others. Olivia gasped softly and instinctively grabbed Ethan's arm to steady herself. His entire demeanor changed instantly. "Okay," he said firmly. "We are done standing here." Within seconds, he guided her carefully toward the black SUV parked nearby. Warm air rushed over Olivia the moment he opened the passenger door. The interior smelled faintly of cedar and expensive leather. She climbed inside shakily while Ethan grabbed her soaked suitcase from the roadside. As he placed it in the back, Olivia noticed the logo stitched subtly into the headrest beside her. Cole International Logistics. Even through the pain and fear, recognition flickered across her face. Everyone in New York business circles knew that name. Ethan Cole, billionaire shipping magnate, media ghost, one of the few men wealthy enough to rival Damian, Sterling himself. Ethan climbed behind the wheel and handed Olivia a clean towel from the center console. "Nearest hospital is 12 miles east," he said while starting the engine. "Can you stay awake that long?" Olivia nodded weakly as rain continued exploding against the windshield. The SUV pulled back onto the interstate smoothly. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Only the sound of tires cutting through standing water filled the silence. Then Ethan glanced briefly toward her stomach. "Does your husband know where you are?" Olivia closed her eyes. "Ex-husband," she whispered. Ethan's jaw tightened slightly. "I see." Another contraction rolled through her body, sharper now. Ethan reached for his phone immediately, using the hands-free system built into the dashboard. "This is Ethan Cole," he said calmly once the line connected. "I need emergency labor staff prepared at St. Matthew's Medical Center. 7-month pregnancy. Possible premature delivery. We are arriving in 9 minutes." Olivia stared at him in confusion after he ended the call. "They know who you are," she said softly. Ethan kept his eyes on the flooded road ahead. Lightning illuminated his face for one brief second. "Cold. Controlled. Dangerous." "Yes," he replied quietly. "They usually do." St. Matthew's Medical Center glowed through the storm like a lighthouse cutting through darkness. By the time Ethan's SUV pulled beneath the emergency entrance canopy, Olivia could barely keep her eyes open. Rainwater dripped from her hair onto the heated leather seat, while another contraction twisted through her body hard enough to steal her breath completely. The automatic doors burst open before the vehicle even stopped moving. 2 nurses rushed forward with a wheelchair, while a doctor in navy scrubs followed close behind. 30-year-old female, Ethan said immediately as he stepped out into the rain beside them. 7 months pregnant. Possible premature labor. Exposure to severe weather for at least 30 minutes. The medical staff moved quickly, but Olivia noticed something strange. They listened to Ethan before they even looked at her chart. The doctor nodded instantly. "Room 6 is ready." Ethan leaned down beside Olivia as nurses carefully helped her from the SUV. "You are safe now," he said quietly. The words should have sounded simple. Instead, they nearly made her cry. Safe. She had not realized how long it had been since she truly felt that word. Inside the emergency wing, the bright hospital lights made everything feel unreal. Nurses attached monitors to her stomach, while another wrapped heated blankets around her shoulders. The baby's heartbeat filled the room seconds later. Fast, strong, alive. Olivia closed her eyes in relief the moment she heard it. "Baby looks stable for now," the doctor said while reviewing the monitor. "But you are severely stressed and dehydrated. We need to stop these contractions before labor progresses." Olivia nodded weakly while a nurse inserted an intravenous line into her arm. Across the room, Ethan stood near the doorway, quietly speaking into his phone. His voice remained low and calm, but every person who passed him seemed instantly alert. Powerful people carried pressure differently. Not loudly, efficiently. Olivia watched him through exhausted eyes while memories of Damian flooded her mind unexpectedly. Damian used to stand beside hospital beds too. Used to squeeze her hand during doctor appointments. Used to smile when they first heard the baby's heartbeat 12 weeks earlier. A son, Damian had whispered back then with tears in his eyes. Or at least what Olivia thought were tears. Now she wondered if even that moment had been real. The monitors suddenly tightened around her stomach as another contraction appeared across the screen. The doctor frowned slightly. "How long ago did the contractions start?" Olivia swallowed hard. "After my husband left me on the highway." The room became silent for one uncomfortable second. Even the nurse checking her blood pressure paused briefly. The doctor looked up carefully. "Your husband abandoned you during a storm?" Olivia stared at the ceiling. Yes. Nobody asked another question after that. They did not need to. Ethan ended his phone call slowly and glanced toward her from the doorway. Something unreadable passed across his expression. Not pity. Worse. Recognition. An older nurse walked into the room, carrying paperwork a few minutes later. We just need emergency contact information, sweetheart. Olivia hesitated. Her fingers tightened around the hospital blanket. I do not want Damian called. The nurse looked confused. The father should know what is happening. No, Olivia's voice cracked softly, but remained firm. He should not. Ethan stepped forward before the silence became awkward. List me instead. The nurse blinked in surprise. Relationship to patient? Ethan paused only half a second. Family friend. Olivia looked toward him in confusion. They had known each other less than 30 minutes. Yet somehow Ethan Cole had already done more for her tonight than Damian Sterling had done in months. The nurse nodded and wrote his information down quickly before leaving the room again. Thunder rumbled outside the hospital windows while the fetal heartbeat echoed steadily through the monitors beside Olivia's bed. Ethan stood near the doorway with one hand in his coat pocket, staring silently at the storm outside. Then without turning around, he spoke quietly. You said your husband's name is Damian Sterling. Olivia nodded slowly. Ethan's reflection in the dark hospital window became very still. Interesting, he murmured almost to himself. I was wondering why your face looked familiar. Olivia studied Ethan carefully through the blur of exhaustion and hospital lights. You know Damian? She asked softly. Ethan did not answer immediately. He remained facing the dark window where rain slid down the glass in restless silver lines. For a moment, the only sound inside the room was the steady heartbeat monitor tracking her baby's life one pulse at a time. Then Ethan turned slowly toward her. 6 years ago, he said calmly, Damian Sterling almost destroyed my company. Olivia blinked in confusion. Ethan Cole's logistics empire was worth billions now. Every business magazine in America called him one of the most disciplined corporate leaders on the East Coast. His cargo ships moved through ports from New York to Singapore. Damian used to complain about him constantly during investor dinners. Competitive, ruthless, dangerous. But Olivia had never known why. Ethan loosened the cuff of his rain-soaked coat slightly before continuing. Back then, Cole International was small, growing fast, but still vulnerable. Damian wanted one of my shipping contracts. I refused to sell. His expression stayed controlled, but something colder moved beneath the surface now. 3 weeks later, half my investors disappeared overnight. Olivia listened quietly while another nurse adjusted the monitors beside her bed. Ethan continued in the same calm tone that somehow made the story feel worse. Bank audits suddenly appeared. False rumors spread through financial media. Construction permits tied to my ports were delayed for months. Every pressure point a business can suffer at once. He gave a faint, humorless smile. Damian was very talented at making problems look accidental. Olivia stared at the blanket covering her lap as memories resurfaced painfully. Damian taking mysterious late-night calls during those years. Damian celebrating aggressively after major contracts. Damian once saying at dinner, "In business, weakness deserves punishment." At the time, she thought he meant competitors. Now she wondered if he meant everyone. What happened? She whispered. Ethan glanced toward the sleeping city lights beyond the storm. I survived. 3 simple words. No pride. No drama. Just fact. Barely. But surviving teaches you things. Especially about men like Damian Sterling. Another contraction tightened across Olivia's stomach, weaker now thanks to medication, but still enough to make her inhale sharply. Ethan immediately stopped talking. Doctor said the medicine is slowing labor. Olivia explained quietly after catching her breath. Ethan nodded once, though tension still lingered around his eyes. Good. Silence settled briefly between them. Then Olivia asked the question she had been afraid to ask since entering the hospital. Do you think he meant to leave me there? Ethan looked directly at her this time. Yes. No hesitation. No comforting lie. The honesty hit harder than cruelty would have. Olivia turned her face away quickly as tears filled her eyes. I kept thinking the baby would change him, she whispered. I thought becoming a father would make him softer somehow. Ethan walked closer to the bed slowly. People like Damian do not become softer when they gain power, he said quietly. They become more honest about who they already were. Olivia closed her eyes as Emotion finally overwhelmed the numbness she had carried all night. Every warning sign she ignored now replayed in brutal detail. Vanessa's laughter at the gala. Damian refusing to attend prenatal appointments. The separate bank accounts opened without explanation. The silence at dinner. The distance in bed. The absence of love long before the storm ever started. A soft knock interrupted the room. The doctor entered holding updated charts. "Good news," she said with a small smile. "The contractions are slowing significantly. Baby appears stable for now." Relief flooded Olivia instantly. "Thank God," she breathed. The doctor nodded while reviewing the monitors. "We will keep you overnight for observation, but I think both of you are going to be okay." "Both of you." Olivia instinctively rested her hand against her stomach. For the first time since Damian abandoned her on the highway, hope flickered weakly through the fear. The doctor left moments later. Ethan moved toward the door as if preparing to leave too. "You should rest," he said. Olivia looked up quickly. "Wait." Ethan paused. "Why did you stop tonight?" she asked softly. There were hundreds of cars on that highway. Ethan studied her for several quiet seconds before answering. "Because I know exactly what it looks like when someone has been left behind." Then without another word he reached into his coat pocket, placed a business card beside her hospital bed, and walked out into the storm-dark hallway beyond. Olivia woke just after sunrise to the sound of rain fading against the hospital windows. For several seconds, she did not remember where she was. Then the ache in her back, the monitors beside her bed, and the empty chair near the doorway brought everything crashing back at once. Damian, the highway, the storm. Her hand moved instinctively to her stomach. The baby kicked softly beneath the blanket as if answering her fear. Alive. Still alive. Olivia exhaled shakily and stared toward the pale morning light stretching across Boston. The city looked peaceful from 12 floors above the streets. Cold glass towers reflected silver clouds, while traffic slowly returned to life below. Somewhere out there, Damian Sterling was probably waking up beside Vanessa Hale in $1,000 sheets, while Olivia lay in a hospital gown, trying to understand how her marriage had collapsed in a single night. A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The same nurse from earlier stepped inside, carrying fresh water and medication. "Good morning, sweetheart," she said gently. "How are we feeling?" Olivia managed a tired smile. "Like I got hit by a truck." The nurse laughed softly while checking the monitors. "That little boy of yours seems much happier this morning." Olivia looked down automatically. "Boy." The nurse blinked. "You did not know?" Olivia shook her head slowly. Tears immediately filled her eyes again for completely different reasons this time. Damian had wanted the gender to be a surprise. Something magical, he called it during happier months. Before everything turned cold, the nurse squeezed Olivia's shoulder kindly. "Healthy heartbeat. Strong lungs. He is a fighter already." After she left, Olivia sat alone in silence for a long moment with one hand resting against her stomach. A son. Damian had a son and did not even know it. The thought should have broken her heart. Instead, something stranger settled inside her chest. Distance. Like the version of Damian she loved no longer existed anywhere except memory. Her eyes drifted toward the business card Ethan left beside the bed overnight. Simple black lettering. Ethan Cole, Chief Executive Officer. Personal direct number beneath it. No unnecessary design. No flashy gold print. Just power stripped down to essentials. Olivia hesitated before picking it up. Then her phone buzzed suddenly across the bedside table. Unknown number. Her stomach tightened instantly before she answered. "Hello." "Olivia." Vanessa Hale's voice slid through the speakers smooth as glass. Olivia froze. "How did you get this number?" Vanessa laughed lightly. "Please. You were married to Damian Sterling. Everybody important has your number." Olivia's grip tightened around the phone. "What do you want?" "Honestly." Vanessa paused dramatically. "I wanted to make sure you survived your little emotional breakdown last night." Olivia closed her eyes as anger finally began replacing shock. "You knew," she whispered. "You knew he was going to leave me there." Silence lingered briefly before Vanessa answered. "Damian made his choice, Olivia. You just refused to accept it." The cruelty in her voice sounded effortless. "Practiced. Do yourself a favor and stop embarrassing yourself by hanging on." Olivia stared out the window while rainwater slid slowly down the glass. Something inside her shifted quietly during that moment. Not rage. Not revenge. Clarity. "You can have Damian," Olivia said softly. Vanessa sounded surprised for the first time. Excuse me. Olivia looked at Ethan's business card again, resting calmly beside her bed like a door she had not noticed before. A man who abandons his pregnant wife during a storm is not a prize, she said quietly. He is a warning. Vanessa's voice hardened instantly. You think anyone will believe you? Damian Sterling owns half this city. Olivia remembered the freezing rain, the empty highway, the headlights disappearing into darkness. Then she remembered Ethan's face when she spoke Damian's name. Calm, patient, dangerous. Maybe, Olivia replied softly. But storms have a way of exposing things people try very hard to hide. Before Vanessa could answer, Olivia ended the call. Her hands trembled afterward, but not from fear anymore. Outside the hospital window, the clouds above Boston slowly began to break apart, allowing thin strands of sunlight to spill across the city for the first time since the storm began. 3 days later, Olivia stood beside the hospital window wearing borrowed sweatpants and an oversized gray sweater while snow drifted quietly across the Boston skyline. The storm that nearly destroyed her life had vanished completely. In its place came silence. Cold, clean, dangerous silence. Her contractions had finally stopped. The doctors cleared her to leave within 48 hours if the baby remained stable. But Olivia still had not decided where she would go. The Manhattan penthouse belonged to Damian. Most of their joint accounts were suddenly frozen. Her credit cards no longer worked. Even her assistant at Sterling Development stopped answering calls. It was astonishing how quickly wealth could erase a person once power decided they no longer mattered. A soft knock sounded against the partially open hospital door. Olivia turned expecting another nurse. Instead, Ethan Cole stepped inside, carrying 2 coffee cups and a thick black folder beneath one arm. He looked exactly the same as the night he found her. Calm, precise, expensive charcoal coat. Not one wasted movement. You are still here, Olivia said quietly. Ethan handed her a warm coffee. You sound surprised. Most people disappear after the crisis ends. Ethan glanced toward the monitors beside her bed. Has it ended? Olivia looked down at the cup in her hands without answering. Ethan placed the black folder carefully on the small table near the window. I spoke with one of my attorneys this morning, he said. Olivia frowned slightly. Why would you do that? Ethan met her eyes directly. Because Damian Sterling started moving money at 6 o'clock yesterday morning. Olivia felt her stomach tighten instantly. What kind of money? Ethan opened the folder slowly. Inside were printed bank transfers, property documents, and corporate filings covered in neat colored tabs. The kind wealthy men move when they think lawsuits are coming. Olivia stared at the pages in disbelief. Offshore accounts, shell companies, emergency asset transfers. Damian's signature appeared everywhere. How did you get these? She whispered. Ethan gave a faint, humorless smile. Damian made enemies long before he made you a victim. Snow continued drifting outside while Olivia turned another page slowly. The amount of hidden money was staggering. Properties she had never heard about. Accounts created years before their marriage even began. Suddenly memories clicked into place again. Damian insisting on separate legal teams during business expansions. Damian refusing transparency around certain investors. Damian once saying, marriage is emotional. Business is survival. Olivia finally looked up. You have been watching him for years. Yes. Ethan did not bother denying it. Men like Damian never stop once they discover power protects them. Olivia closed the folder carefully. Why are you showing me this? Ethan walked toward the window beside her. Down below, Boston traffic crawled through slushy streets beneath pale winter sunlight. Because right now Damian thinks you are weak, Ethan said quietly. He thinks fear will keep you silent. Olivia swallowed hard. And if I am afraid? Ethan turned toward her. Then be afraid. But do not confuse fear with helplessness. The words settled heavily between them. Olivia looked toward the hospital mirror across the room. Pale skin, exhausted eyes, hospital bracelet still wrapped around her wrist. 3 nights ago she stood abandoned on a highway believing her life was over. Now a billionaire she barely knew was handing her evidence that could destroy one of the most powerful men in New York. Her phone suddenly buzzed across the bedside table. Damian Sterling flashed across the screen for the first time since the storm. Olivia froze completely. Ethan glanced at the phone once, but said nothing. The ringing continued. Loud, sharp, insistent. Finally, Olivia answered slowly. Hello. Damian's voice came instantly smooth and controlled like nothing had happened. Olivia. Thank God. I have been trying to reach you for days. Olivia stared out the window at the falling snow. Really? She asked softly. Damian ignored the question. You left in an emotional state the other night. Vanessa told me you overreacted and disappeared. Olivia almost laughed at the audacity of it. Emotional state. As if abandonment during a storm was a misunderstanding instead of betrayal. Damian lowered his voice carefully. Listen to me. Whatever happened that night does not need to become public. Ethan's expression changed almost imperceptibly across the room. Olivia felt something cold settle quietly into her chest. Not pain anymore. Understanding. You are not worried about me, she whispered. You are worried about your reputation. Silence filled the line for half a second too long. And that silence told her everything. Damian's silence stretched across the phone line like a crack spreading through glass. Olivia stood motionless beside the hospital window while snow drifted slowly over Boston below. Across the room, Ethan watched her carefully without interrupting. Finally, Damian spoke again, his voice softer now. Controlled. Strategic. Olivia, listen to me. We were both emotional that night. Olivia almost admired how naturally he rewrote reality. Almost. You left your pregnant wife on the side of Interstate 90 during a blizzard, she said quietly. That was not emotion. That was a decision. Damian exhaled sharply. I did not know the weather would get that bad. Ethan lowered his eyes briefly at the lie. Olivia noticed. You knew exactly what you were doing, she whispered. Damian's patience cracked slightly. Fine. What do you want from me? There it was. Not concern. Not guilt. Negotiation. Olivia stared at the falling snow while something inside her finally settled into place completely. For days her emotions had moved like the storm itself. Fear, grief, shock. But now everything felt strangely calm. I want nothing from you, she said. That is what scares you, Damian. Silence answered her again. Then his voice hardened. Be careful, Olivia. Public sympathy fades quickly. Courts do not reward emotional stories without proof. Ethan slowly folded his arms across his chest. Olivia glanced toward the black folder on the table beside her. Proof. Damian had no idea how much proof already existed. Goodbye, Damian. Olivia, wait. But she ended the call before he could regain control of the conversation. The room fell quiet except for the soft rhythm of the fetal heartbeat monitor beside her bed. Ethan walked toward the window slowly. He is nervous, he said. Olivia let out a faint breath. He is calculating. Ethan gave a small nod. Same thing for men like him. Snow continued falling outside, while Boston disappeared beneath soft white haze. Olivia looked exhausted suddenly. Not physically. Spiritually. I do not want revenge, she admitted quietly. I just want peace. Ethan studied her carefully before answering. Peace without truth usually belongs to the person who caused the damage. The words lingered heavily in the room. Olivia lowered herself slowly into the chair beside the hospital bed. You really hate him. Ethan looked toward the city skyline again. No, his expression remained unreadable. Hatred is emotional. I simply understand him. Olivia frowned slightly. Ethan hesitated before speaking again. 6 years ago, Damian ruined my company because I refused to sell him a shipping route contract. During the investigation afterward, I learned something important. He glanced toward the black folder. Men who believe consequences do not apply to them eventually become careless. Olivia looked down at the paperwork again. Offshore accounts. Illegal transfers. Fraud hidden beneath luxury and influence. How long have you been collecting this? She asked quietly. Long enough. Another silence settled between them before Ethan reached into his coat pocket and removed a folded invitation card. Thick cream paper. Gold embossed lettering. He handed it to her carefully. Olivia opened it slowly. Sterling Foundation Winter Charity Gala. 4 weeks from tonight. Manhattan. Her stomach tightened immediately. Vanessa planned this event, she murmured. Ethan nodded once. Damian needs it badly. Investors have started asking questions. Public image matters more than ever right now. Olivia stared at the invitation while memories flashed through her mind. Crystal chandeliers. Champagne glasses. Vanessa smiling beside Damian like she already owned Olivia's life. Ethan's voice remained calm beside her. They will expect you to stay hidden after what happened. Olivia looked up slowly. And if I do not? Ethan's eyes held the first trace of something dangerous all morning. Then the entire room changes. Snow tapped softly against the hospital windows while Olivia looked back down at the invitation in her hands. For weeks ago, she would have walked into that ballroom, hoping to save her marriage. Now she imagined walking into the same room, carrying the truth instead. The thought terrified her. But beneath the fear, something else began quietly growing for the first time since the storm. Strength. Ethan moved toward the door before stopping briefly. "Rest," he said softly. "Because the next time Damian Sterling sees you." His gaze drifted toward the invitation card still resting in Olivia's trembling hands. It cannot be as the woman he left behind in the rain. For weeks later, Manhattan glittered beneath winter lights and falling snow while black luxury cars lined the entrance of the Sterling Foundation Winter Charity Gala. Cameras flashed across the marble steps of the Grand Dominion Hotel as reporters shouted questions at celebrities, politicians, and investors arriving beneath gold chandeliers taller than most homes. Inside the ballroom, Damian Sterling stood near the center stage wearing a perfectly tailored tuxedo and the confident smile that built his empire. Beside him, Vanessa Hale rested one manicured hand against his arm, while photographers captured what every business magazine was already calling New York's most powerful couple. But Damian kept checking the entrance every few minutes without realizing it. Waiting. Nervous. The cracks had started weeks earlier. Anonymous financial leaks reached federal investigators. Investors quietly withdrew millions from Sterling development accounts. 2 board members resigned without explanation. Damian still controlled the room tonight, but barely. He could feel it. Men who spent their lives around power always sensed when it began slipping away. Vanessa leaned closer with a practiced smile. "Relax," she whispered softly. "She is not coming." Damian adjusted his cufflinks without answering. Then suddenly the ballroom changed. Conversations slowed first, then stopped entirely. Even the orchestra near the stage faltered awkwardly mid-performance. Vanessa turned toward the entrance with irritation already forming across her face. Then she saw Olivia. She stood beneath the crystal lights wearing a silver gown that caught the room's attention without demanding it. Elegant. Calm. One hand rested lightly against the small baby carrier beside her while snow melted slowly across the shoulders of her white coat. The transformation stunned the room. For weeks ago, Damian left a frightened pregnant woman on the side of a highway during a storm. Tonight, Olivia Bennett walked into his gala looking untouchable. And she was not alone. Ethan Cole stepped beside her in a black tuxedo sharp enough to silence an entire ballroom without a single word. Reporters instantly began whispering his name. Cameras shifted direction. Investors exchanged nervous looks. Damian's expression froze for the first time all evening. "Impossible," Vanessa whispered under her breath. Olivia moved through the ballroom slowly while every eye followed her. She did not rush, did not smile, did not look angry. That frightened Damian more than anything else. Because rage was emotional. Calm was deliberate. The baby inside the carrier stirred softly as Olivia reached the center of the ballroom floor. Ethan stopped beside her while silence spread across the crowd like smoke. Damian forced a smile that no longer reached his eyes. "Olivia," he said carefully, "you look well." Olivia studied him for several quiet seconds before answering. "That is surprising considering where you left me." A few nervous laughs died instantly around the room. Vanessa stepped forward quickly. "This is not the place for emotional drama." Olivia finally looked at her. Calm. Steady. "You are right," she said softly. "This is the place for truth." Ethan handed a small remote control to the hotel technician near the orchestra platform. The massive projection screens surrounding the ballroom flickered unexpectedly. Damian's face lost color immediately. Security footage appeared above the crowd. Rain. Interstate 90. Damian's black Range Rover stopped along the shoulder during the storm. Guests stared upward in silence as Olivia stepped out into freezing rain visibly pregnant, while Damian threw her suitcase into floodwater before driving away. The audio echoed through the ballroom seconds later. "If you want to keep that baby, survive without me." The room exploded into horrified whispers instantly. Vanessa grabbed Damian's arm. "Turn it off." But it was too late. Investors stepped away from him visibly. One older board member removed his glasses slowly while staring at the screen in disbelief. Then Ethan nodded once toward the second projection. Financial documents filled the ballroom walls. offshore accounts, fraud investigations, hidden transfers tied directly to Sterling development, federal case numbers already active. Damian finally snapped. "This is extortion," he shouted. "You planned this." Ethan's expression never changed. "No," he said quietly. "You planned this the night you abandoned your wife during a blizzard." Security officers entered the ballroom beside federal investigators moments later. Cameras flashed wildly as guests moved aside. Vanessa stepped backward in panic while Damian looked desperately toward Olivia one final time. "Please," he whispered. "Olivia." She looked at him without hatred, without satisfaction, without love, just clarity. Then she rested one hand gently against her son's carrier and turned away while federal agents approached Damian beneath the same crystal chandeliers he once believed made him untouchable. Outside the ballroom, snow continued falling softly across Manhattan while Olivia stepped into the cold night air beside Ethan Cole. And somewhere behind them, an empire finally began collapsing under the weight of the storm it created.